What's up, Duelists? MD here, and today I'm going to be profiling for you guys my Pendulum Magician deck. Now, as you saw in the title of the video, yes, I did get a top 8 in this deck in a recent tournament I went to. The deck is super good now that we have all of our Pendulum Magician stuff. And this is all very affordable too, because there are no short prints in the Pendulum Evolution set, so everything you need is very affordable, very easy to pull, or you can just buy them singles from your local card shop. Always support your card shop, guys. Alright, so without any delay, let's get right into it. And I should probably mention quickly that there are a couple different ways you could build the Pendulum Magician deck, though mine focuses more around the Supreme King Zarc than pure Pendulum Magicians, but it's up to you which version you want to do. Alright, so we're going to start off here with 3 copies of Harmonizing Magician. Now, this card is insanely good. Pendulum Effect, it's okay. Basically, all your monsters gain 100 attack for each different Pendulum Magician in your face-up extra deck. So, not too bad, not too bad. 8 scale, pretty good. But its monster effect is where it's at. So unfortunately, it cannot be special summoned from extra deck, which is kind of a shame. But that's okay. That's why you run 3. And it cannot be used for material for any kind of summon. Extra deck summon, unless all the materials are Magician types. So when this card's Pendulum summoned, you could special summon a Pendulum Magician from your deck in either position you want, but its effects are negated, and also when it leaves the field, you have to banish it. But that doesn't really matter, because that's basically a 1-card rank 4 XCs, or a 1-card synchro. And just so amazing. So amazing. And yes, this is the Pendulum version of Tuning Magician, so just in case you guys didn't know that. Alright, so then going forward with some of the newer stuff here. We have 2 copies of Double Iris Magician. Now, I run 2 of all the new Magicians here, because this is one of the ones that count as the extra deck dragons. So this one counts as a Pendulum Dragon. And both of its effects are really good. Now, this one here, I almost ran at 3 because of its monster effect. But let's look at the Pendulum effect first. You can target one of your Dark Spellcasters, and basically it gives it the same effect as Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, to where they do double damage when they battle your opponent's monster. So not too bad, and then you destroy it after you apply that effect. So when this card's destroyed, by any means, you search your deck for a Pendulum Graph card and add it to your hand. Now it's that right there. The Pendulum Graph cards are so good, guys, and that's the reason I almost ran this at 3. But I figured 2 was just fine, because there are other ways to search your Pendulum Graph cards, but if you want to run them at 3, by all means, go for it. Alright. Next up here, we have 2 copies of White Wing Magician. Not too much to say about this one. Its Pendulum effect is pretty good, to where if something targets a Dark Spellcaster of yours, you can negate the effect and destroy this card. And its monster effect is nothing really special. It's just saying you have to banish it when you use it for synchro material. So, lame. But it is another level 4 tuner, so helps make some of you more of your synchro plays there. So again, like I said, nothing too much to say about that one. Next up here, we're going to be running 2 copies of Black Fang Magician. Now this is the one that counts as the Xyz Dragon. Now this one, I don't know if I already said it, but this one counts as the Synchro Dragon. So both its effects are good. Its Pendulum effect makes it to where you could have your opponent's monsters attack, then destroy the card right after. So it's practically the same as Dark Rebellion. And when this card is destroyed, you could special summon a Dark Spellcaster from your graveyard. So, pretty good, pretty good. This is another one I can understand if you want to run at 3, because it's really good. And last up for the Fusion Dragon Magicians, Fusion Dragon Magician, extra deck Dragon Magician, is going to be Purple Poison Magician. This one counts as the Fusion Dragon. And both its effects are really good too. The Pendulum effect allows your Dark Spellcaster when in battles to gain 1200 attack, and you destroy the card afterwards. And when this card is destroyed, you can destroy one of your opponent's cards on the field. So, technically any card you can destroy, but most of the time it's your opponent's. But, with the way this deck runs, sometimes destroying your own stuff is better. So, these are also applies all the materials you need for Supreme King Zarc. And let's get these out of the way here, and I'll show you guys some more. Alright, so speaking of Supreme King Zarc, we have here 3 copies of Astrograph Sorcerer. Names, though. Why couldn't you be called Astrograph Magician? The Zarc version would be the superior one if you were called Astrograph Magician. But oh well. As you guys know, you banish this along with the materials needed from your hand, graveyard, or on field to special summon Supreme King Zarc. So pretty good there, but it's got some other pretty cool effects too. You don't really focus too much on the pendulum effect, though you might have it in your scale more often because it's 1 scale, so that's pretty good. But basically you just replace that with Stargazer Magician. So, and who runs Stargazer Magician? Really? I personally wouldn't. So, alright, so like I said, it's monster effect. You can special summon Zarc by banishing, but it also has the really cool effect, so whenever a card you control is destroyed, you can special summon him from your hand and search your deck for the same copy of that card. So, really, really cool here as well. Now, one of the things I might change, I might run him to 2. Not because he's not good, don't get me wrong. It's just that there's plenty of ways to search this guy. Not to mention, you don't want to see him too early. So, like I said, he did not fail me at 3. Did not whatsoever, but if I were to change it around, which I am going to, because I still want to experiment with this deck as much as possible before Link format comes out, which there is a way to make the deck survive Link format. Just want to say that quickly. This deck, I don't feel will die when Link summoning becomes a thing. I do feel it's going to lose its meta placing, don't get me wrong on that, but with all the support we have, and we would have to build the deck very differently, but I think this could still be a good rogue deck because of all the ways we had to recycle stuff from our face-up extra deck back to our hand. Like, say, Oath Dragon's the biggest one. Then we have Amazing Pendulum. Those are the 2 big contenders for this deck as to why this deck can still survive come Link Summon format. But if you want to get creative, we also do have Rescue Hamster and stuff like that. So that's why, like I said, it's probably going to lose its meta placing, but this is still going to be a very good road deck, I feel. Alright. And that was it for the new stuff. Well, most of our new stuff. So let's check out our main searcher of the deck, Perform Pal Skullcrobat Joker. Guys, I was jumping and dancing for joy when we got this guy back at 3. He's so amazing. When you normal summon him, you search your deck for Odd Eyes, Pendulum Magician, or Perform Pal Monster, which doesn't really apply much here, but the Odd Eyes and Pendulum Magician, big deal. And we have a way to search this guy again. Yay! Alright, so that does it for that. And here's another guy I'm glad we have back at 3, Wisdom Eye Magician. Now his monster effect, you cannot really apply to this at all, but you don't really want to. It's the Pendulum effect. Basically, you destroy him and you replace it with another Magician scale. So, very good. And especially with these search cards we have now, destroying this guy has never been better. Alright. And last up for our Pendulum Magicians, we have 2 copies of Dragon Pit Magician. Now, this is just to help get rid of some back row. Not to mention also getting some of our extra deck Magicians into the graveyard to help fusion summon our Zarc. So pretty good there. Not to mention 8 scale is always good. Level 7, that is pretty good as well. So no other reasons I run him. Now, as I said, this is the last of our Magicians. In this version, we do not run Oath Dragon because he's not needed. But once Link Summoning comes back, he is automatically coming back to a 3 of. Just because, as I said before, he's probably one of the main reasons why this deck can still function. Alright, so now we're going to get into our Odd Eye stuff. So we have 1 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, 1 Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, and 1 Perform Pal Odd Eyes Unicorn. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon just because he's Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. I don't feel right running a Magician deck without him. Not to mention, if you have a bad hand and you have him in your hand, just set him on your scale, and then your end phase, he pops himself to search for a Pendulum monster with 15 or less attack. And not to mention, for those of you who don't know, he's got the iconic effect to where his damage is double when you battle opponent's monster. So, now we're going to get into this guy here, Odd Eyes Persona Dragon. Now this guy is a real good card. However, he ain't cheap. I will say that right now. Currently, Odd Eyes Persona Dragon is not cheap. So that would be the one reason I say you wouldn't have to run this guy. But, whew, he's good. You don't really focus too much on the Pendulum effect. It's mainly his monster effect. To where during either player's turn, you can negate an extra deck monster your opponent controls, negate their effects. So, really, really good. Not to mention this, like I said, this is during either player's turn. So this helps out really well against the Zoo matchup when they get their Broad Bowl or Dryden out. Boom, just negate it. And they just wasted it. So very, very good card. Again, this can be searchable with Sky Iris. Though, once again, unfortunately, he is currently not cheap. I think the cheapest I've seen him is like $30-something. So yeah, if you guys want to spend that money for him, he is worth it. But I understand if you guys don't have that kind of money to spare. And last up here, we have Perform by Odd Eyes Unicorn. Mainly just because it's an Odd Eyes 8 scale that's searchable. However, this is probably the only time I'm going to say this. I would probably consider replacing him with Mirage Dragon. Mainly because of the fact that Mirage Dragon is a Pendulum Dragon. And this is not a Pendulum Dragon. That's the only reason I would say it. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. But this one's got the Pendulum effect to where, basically, if you have an Odd Eyes monster on the field, you could target your Skullcrobat Joker, and he'll gain Skullcrobat Joker's attack during that battle phase. So, not really something you use that often. And again, this would be the only instance to where I would say you could replace it with Mirage Dragon, because, once again, pure fact that it's a Pendulum Dragon over a Pendulum Beast. Alright, so that does it for our monster count in the deck. Now let's go to our spells. Alright, so we have 3 copies of Duelist Alliance. Probably one of the most broken cards they've ever printed for the Pendulum Magician archetype. This card searches close to half of your deck. And I'm not even exaggerating with that. So if you have a card in your Pendulum zone, you can play it and add 1 card that has Pendulum in the name, a Pendulum Speller Trap, and add it to your hand. So that searches almost all of your spells, both your traps, and also searches Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. So lots of stuff this thing searches. And next up here, we have Star Pendulum Graph. Now, I said that Duelist Alliance was broken. This is like 3 times more broken, guys. Currently, I would say this card's almost E-ban worthy. Just because it's so good. First of all, your spellcaster monsters can't be targeted with your opponent's spell or trap effects. And also, whenever a face-up Pendulum Magician monster leaves the field, you can search your deck for another Pendulum Magician monster. You can only do it once per turn, but during another turn. And that's right, it just says leaves the field. It doesn't matter or care how. Destroyed, sent to graveyard, banish, shuffle into deck, used for synchro material, fusion material, whatever. It does not care how it leaves the field. So, one of the combos I was showing you guys, that's why I was saying Wisdom Eye was so good. So, let's say you have Wisdom Eye and something else there. You pop your Wisdom Eye, then you replace the scale, and if you have this out, you search it. So, I mean, you could search for another Pendulum Magician monster on top of replacing your scale from Wisdom Eye's effect. So good. And you could search it with Duelist Alliance along with Double Iris Dragon. And next up here, another very broken card that I'm so glad we have back at 3 is Pendulum Call. You discard a card, search your deck for 2 Pendulum Magician monsters with 2 different names, add them to your hand, and it protects your Pendulum Magician scales from being destroyed until the end of your opponent's next turn. So very, very good. Glad we got this card back at 3. Now this was the one card I completely understood why they limited it to 1, just because it's so good. And now it's searchable with Duelist Alliance, so you practically run 6 Pendulum Calls in your decks. Crazy, crazy. Alright, next up here we run 2 copies of Sky Iris and 2 copies of Terraforming. Now, running the Odd Eyes monsters in your Pendulum Magician deck is optional. This is not. You absolutely have to have Sky Iris. It's too good not to have. Because even without the popping searching effect, it protects your scales from being targeted with your opponent's card effects. And Sky Iris, I would say, is arguably one of the best field spells ever printed. Because it protects your scales, you pop a card, you search for an Odd Eyes card, and it just does so much. So I figure it'd be pointless to just run Sky Iris and not have a good amount of searchable targets, because you want to pop your stuff in this deck to activate spell Pendulum Graph to search. So yeah, you could get up to 2 searches at once with Sky Iris Star Pendulum Graph combo. It's completely busted. And last up for our spells, we run 1 Odd Eyes Fusion and 1 Pendulum Fusion, another card that can be searched with Duelist Alliance. Now, Odd Eyes Fusion, you have to run in this deck. It's too good. Gets out your Vortex Dragon and all that good stuff. And also puts extra deck Dragon monsters into your graveyard. So, very, very good. I would possibly consider running this at 2 if you guys wanted, but 1's okay. Now, Pendulum Fusion, don't get me wrong, good card. But I only ever really used this card once, so I might take this card out. I mean, it's a good card, don't get me wrong, because it acts as a regular polymerization for your field, but if you have both your scales filled, you can fusion summon with materials from your scales as materials for the fusion, so it's very, very good. There was even one time to where I actually managed to summon Zarc with this card with all 4 of the different types of spellcaster extra deck cards, to where I had 2 of them in scale and 2 of them on field. Boom, get out Zarc like that. But most of the time you want to just use Astrograph for that. So that does it for our spells. And last up for our traps, we just run 2-time Pendulum Graph. So your opponent can't target spellcaster type monsters with trap effects, so that's pretty good. And you can destroy a magician card you control along with one of your opponent's cards and just pop them both. However, if you do not destroy 2 cards, you send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. That part does not target or destroy, so that's really good. Especially since you have ways to protect your magicians from being destroyed. So let's say if you played Pendulum Call, and then on your opponent's turn you activate this card and target your scale. Your scale wouldn't get destroyed. Whatever you target on your opponent's side gets destroyed, and you could send one of their cards to the graveyard. So pretty good card, pretty good card. And that does it for the main deck. And now for our extra deck. We run 3 copies of Time Star Magician. Super, super good. Basically, it requires 2 level 4 Magician Pendulum monsters. And you detach a material and search your deck for a dark spellcaster. Most of the time it's going to be Astrograph or Perform Pal Skull Crobat Joker. That's why I was saying we have a way to search Joker now with that. And once per turn, if a pendulum monster or somewhere in your pendulum zone would be destroyed, you could send a Pendulum Magician from your deck to graveyard instead. Which that really helps out get out the materials for Supreme King Zarc. So very, very good card here. I would not run this any less than 3, unless of course Konami told us otherwise. And last up for rank 4 is I run Performance Trapeze Magician. However, this could really be any rank 4 you want. It could be Castell, Dark Rebellion, whatever you want it to be. I just figure it could be a good addition for the OTKs. So yeah, that's my reason behind it. And last up for our XCs, we run 1 Odd Eyes Raging, 1 Odd Eyes Absolute. Now Raging is in here mainly due just as something to send with Odd Eyes Fusion. But I might change around my deck a little bit to make him possible, just because I love Raging Dragon so much. Like, I love summoning him. He's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite Odd Eyes monster is Raging, just because he's so awesome. And in the anime, the first time we saw Raging Dragon was amazing. And Odd Eyes Absolute just because he's a staple for Odd Eyes decks. He's a generic rank 7 that you detach, negate an attack, then you special summon an Odd Eyes from graveyard. So, pretty good indeed. And like I said, that's it for the XCs. Now let's get into our fusions. And then, as I said, this version is tailored more to Supreme King Zarc. Now, this guy's good. He's good. Let's go over the monster effect first, then I'll tell you about the pendulum effect. So basically, whenever he's summoned, you destroy all of your opponent's cards. All of them. He cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is really good. And whenever he destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon a Supreme King monster from your deck or extra deck, obviously except for Zarc. And 4,000, yeah, he's gonna destroy that monster by battle. He's gonna do it. So let's look at the pendulum effect. Something that doesn't really come up too often, but matter of fact, it really like in theory it shouldn't come up because he's really hard to destroy, but his pendulum effect is really just gross. Basically, anything from your opponent's extra deck, fusion, synchro, and XCs cannot activate their effects. So it pretty much just blocks off in your opponent's entire extra deck, obviously except for links when those come out. And also when your opponent adds a card from their hand, adds a card to hand from deck, except during the draw phase, you could destroy a card from their hand. So really good on scale, but most of the time it shouldn't be there. And in case you guys were wondering, even though I said this is more tailored to Supreme King Zarc, I do not run Dark Worm nor the Supreme Gates. Mainly because I don't really like them too much. I don't feel they really help Supreme King Zarc much. So if you want to make it even more tailored to the Supreme Kings, like trust me, I love the Supreme King stuff, but I would wait for the Servant Dragons. Like wait for the Odd Eyes, the Clearwing, Dark Rebellion, and most of all, the Starving Venom Servant. I feel that one's the most broken of all, but yeah, like I said, if you want to make it even more Supreme King Zarc oriented, I mean, you could run the Gates, but like I said, I personally don't recommend it because they don't really help Zarc much. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait, but the best thing I could say is wait for the Servant Dragons to come out. All right, and next up here, we have Perform Pal Gatling Ghoul and 2 copies of Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. Now, this is what you get out with your Odd Eyes Fusion, but you could also get this out with Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon when he's destroyed. So pretty good. When he's summoned, put in your opponent's face-up attack position monster on field back to their hand. And it can also negate your opponent's effects by shuffling a face-up pendulum monster from extra deck back into your main deck. So another way to recycle your extra deck stuff once Link Summon becomes a thing. Now, Perform Pal Gatling Ghoul, pretty much the only way to fusion this one is Pendulum Fusion. But don't get me wrong, he is not why I want to get rid of Pendulum Fusion. Now, this guy's actually pretty good. So, when he's Fusion Summoned, you inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each card on the field. So, that could add up pretty quickly depending on if both of you have a big field. And then if it was Fusion Summoned with a Pendulum Monster, you destroy one card your opponent controls. One monster that they control, and you inflict damage on them equal to that monster's original attack. So, 4 Pal Gatling Ghouls is definitely pretty good, don't get me wrong. It's just, it's like I said, the only way you could really make him in this deck is on Pendulum Fusion. So, but for Perform Pal decks, do I recommend running him? Absolutely. He's, like I said, he's good. It's not that he's not good. It's just Pendulum Fusion I feel is not worth running just for him. But, like I said, I guess I can't complain too much because this guy did help me win one of my games against Burning Abyss. So, do with it as you will. So, like I said, definitely a good card. Just, I'm not sure if it's worth the Pendulum Fusion. Right in here. And last up here, we have our Synchro monsters. We have Void Ogre, Ignister, Enlightenment Paladin, and Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. Now, this card right here is just send away material for Odd Eyes Fusion. So nothing too special there. Enlightenment Paladin is a level, now the rest of these are at level 8, so extremely easy to synchro with our Harmonized Magician here. So Void Ogre Dragon, basically if you have no cards in your hand, you can negate one of your opponent's spell or trap effects during other player's turn. So very, very good if you're opening up pretty low and don't have much in defense. So this is like one of your cards you can make going first. So, and obviously Ignister, because what Pendulum deck doesn't run him? You destroy one of your own Pendulum monsters, and when that happens, search with Star Pendulum Graph. So not only do you get a search with the Star Pendulum Graph combo, you shuffle one of your opponent's monsters back into their deck, and it does not target or destroy, so almost nothing can get around this guy. And Enlightenment Paladin, if he's synchroned with a Magician Pendulum monster, you could search your graveyard for a spell, add it back to your hand, and if it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you burn them for that monster's original attack. So that does it for my version of the new Pendulum Magician deck. Like I said, though mine's tailored more kind of specifically to Supreme King Zarc, yours doesn't have to be. There's a couple different ways you can make this deck. And once the starter deck comes out for the new Link Summon stuff, I'll be doing a profile showing how you can make this with Link Summon. Like I said, it's certainly not impossible. It could still be a good rogue deck. Matter of fact, this is probably going to be the only Pendulum deck that can survive come Link Summon format. So, play it as while you guys, play it as while you still can. Like I said, everything is super cheap minus Persona, but you don't have to run Persona. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And hopefully I'll be uploading whenever I can, because life is too busy. So, this has been Magician's Descendant, and I'll catch you duelists later.